Hey, Vuthany Vutano here, and we're going to be taking a look at Ancient, and I'm sure you've all seen this map, and by that I mean judging by the playtime, I'm sure nobody's seen this map, so I want to go over some things that you might want to know if you want to win on the map, as well as, things like rotations, and some changes I think the map is likely to have in the near future that will adjust the way it's going to be played. Before we go any further, I want to thank the sponsor for this video, Leadify. Leadify is an AI coach that allows you to improve faster by analyzing your Face-It or matchmaking games and giving you insight into your weaknesses as well as personalized training. Leadify has also implemented a team finder area on their website that will match you based on your skill level, schedule, and ambition, so you can find like-minded players outside of my YouTube comments. Whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, or you're a professional player watching my videos trying to be as good as me, Leadify is the app for you. It's also free to use, so give a click to the link in the description and head on over to leadify.com. First off, if you haven't seen the map very much, if you haven't really given it a chance, here is the most common meeting points you're going to want to see. You've got the CTs meet pretty deep in middle here, which means you can open up with something like a Molotov. Similarly, pretty deep in A-side tunnels here as well. And I'm going to link a picture of the callouts, as well as a link in the description some utility videos that I think are actually pretty solid, because I don't want to go over all of the utility in this video, more so the concepts that you want to be knowing about in order to win on the map. As well, meet up over here. You meet up pretty aggressively there. However, the Ts can fairly easily molly this from all the way back here, so it's going to be tough for the CTs to do much, and in fact, a lot of the time you just smoke this off. And the meeting point over here is fairly aggressive as well, so this is definitely a map where a lot of these meeting points are pretty pushed up for both teams. However, the utility usage is very likely to shift this map to the CT-sided, and especially early round, the CTs are given a good amount of control. Now, if we want to start with setups, you should most likely be running this map as a 2-2-1, as really you need control of mid as well as B side fairly heavily, but on the A side, you can kind of give it up because of the way this side works. Now, the way the A side operates is you can kind of run a player in here somewhat aggressively on occasion, because you can try and delay the control of the Ts, taking control of the tunnels area as much as you can from time to time. However, usually you can just give that up entirely and play a bit of a retake setup, where maybe you get a pick from towards temple here, you get a shot, you can fall back easily and play retake, and because the bomb site is so pushed up, even if you do take a shot and fall off, it's going to be tough for them to get a safe plant, because you can very easily molly off this entire area with one molly if you throw it correctly. With cave control, you can easily play retake and you can prevent any bomb plants. So generally when it comes to the A side, it's going to be a fairly lightly held area, because you can't take A reasonably, or at least you can't hold it with a bomb plant without also having control of cube or donut room, whichever you want to call it. But there's a damn cube in the middle of it, so it should be called cube. Really. Anyways, that essentially pushes the Ts to take mid control, because otherwise A is more or less shut off from the map, and that's why 2-2-1 is most likely the setup you're going to be able to see. Although you can see, when we look at the first professional game played, it was actually Anonymo playing in ESEA Premier. They were running a decent amount of no A and kind of gamble stacked on mid, which does make perfect sense, because the Ts are going to be going heavily for mid control themselves, and again, it's going to take a while for them to take A, because you have to clear out all of these angles, and they can't know you're not there until later, at which point you can already have rotated back over. So at a higher level, I'm expecting a little bit of that type of play, where you may be gambling off of A or off of B early in order to try and contest middle. Now, the thing about middle, a little bit similar to Cash, you do have these two kind of contrasting angles you have to worry about. With Cash, it's boost and mid garage, and with this map, it's of course the B side of middle and the A side of middle, and it's going to be very tough for a non-aggressively positioned CT side to try to control if you give the Ts control of this area. So I think a large majority of this map will come down to trying to contest over these sorts of areas here, and you can see in most of the games played already on Face-It 10, I've seen the majority of teams throw a ton of utility both in this lane and towards middle at the beginning of the round. Now, the utility you can throw towards middle at the beginning can come up with a molly like this, or a molly. You can actually throw mollies deeper, but this molly is very nice because it will bloom as the tee's getting to about here, which means if they do smoke it off, first off, they have to smoke themselves off, essentially, to go through it. As well, they'll be taking full damage instead of some later mollies you might throw that land a bit deeper, where they can get through it without taking much damage. And then you can have tees tossing some flashes over kind of deep like this that will... And you can have tees flashing over like this, which will land behind the tees and in front of the CTs. Or similarly, if you have multiple players going middle, the tees can be doing something like a double click flash over here, which won't blind them, but it'll blind the majority of CT angles that might want to be contesting this area. So you do want to be throwing something like that molly early. A lot of teams are going to be throwing that molly and then a smoke deep, although if you really want it to be clear and make sure nothing went wrong here, you could throw that type of molly and a nade behind it. So if they do try to run through or they try to smoke off the molly, they're going to be hit by a nade, slowed down, and going to have a very tough time of it. However, it's really going to vary between teams and players. It's just an idea to keep in mind that the tees do get to mid fairly aggressively, and it is very easy for them to be tossing utility over middle that both doesn't blind them but does blind you. I mean, they're not the most ridiculous flashes if they land up there, but you will get blind for long enough that the tees will be able to swing on you early on in the round, especially if they have a smoke up towards house, which you can throw in about a million different ways to deal with you. So as a CT, obviously mid control is going to be a pretty big thing to keep in mind, but really what you're hoping for is more donut control than anything. If you were to lose mid control, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but if you were to lose donut control, then you're going to be in a rough spot because A is going to be very hard to hold. You can easily be tossing smokes to try and take control and plant the bomb, and A isn't easy to hold. I don't think any T side is going to be comfortable trying to hold A without having donut control. However, with donut control, it's going to be really awkward for the CTs to retake because although you can smoke this area off, again, the bomb plant zone is very small, which makes it very hard to actually defuse without getting spammed directly through. As well, Valve was nice enough to line up these walls completely, which means it's even easier to kind of idiot-proof spam through this area and get anyone that's, you know, more or less on top of the bomb if you do it correctly. Now, on the B side, I mentioned trying to control this lane here. There's actually a smoke I've seen a few people throw now. This is a 128 tick smoke. However, there are ways to throw it in 64 tick, and again, I'll link videos in the description that you can actually use if you want to learn that type of thing. You can throw this smoke here. So while the Ts will get through that smoke before the CTs can get aggressive, it does prevent any support for the Ts that are trying to support their team from back here. And if you combine that with something like a deep Molotov thrown off of the wall here, you're going to be able to get some level of control where it's tough for the Ts to actually effectively contest this side. You can do something similar with basically the same smoke and mollies that come over the wall like this that will effectively push them forward, and that'll make any swing you go for from here or from the mid side of B to try and peek out on them a little bit more safe as well, because you don't have to worry about players kind of sitting back here and jiggling out on you to try and deal with you after a flash gets thrown. When it comes to B, you're going to want to be mixing in this type of aggression from time to time. However, the cave area near B here is the spot where it's kind of like ladder on train, and I think this is what is going to make the map a little bit kind of unfun to play, in that this is a spot where you absolutely need control of this, almost similar to Donut. You need control of this if you really want to have any chance of holding an after plant on B. While you can take B and smoke this area off and plant the bomb, because they have nerfed, basically you can't spam through here as you used to be able to. Well, there is a way to do it, and I'll show you. You can get the bomb plant by smoking this off. However, you're really not going to be able to hold the bomb site without control of this in general. And again, similarly, by the way, you can just throw very easy Molotovs and nades that will push out anyone on the entirety of the B bomb site from being able to actually plant. So, you know, it's going to be a little bit awkward, and I think this might devolve into something kind of like A on Vertigo on both sides, where nades and mollies onto the bomb plant is going to make planting the bomb not much fun. But regardless, holding B is going to be extremely tough without control of this area. However, you don't want to stack multiple players in here as a CT side. What you really need is one player that can come in here, come to an angle like this, and try to hold it as well as possible without dying. Basically, you want to have him go 1 for 0, because the T's similarly aren't going to be able to realistically overload this area because the angles are so narrow that if a player is in a spot like this, it's really tough to trade on this. It's easy for him to multi-frag, and you may just see T's work in here with 1 to 2 players trying to control it, and a good defender is going to get himself a lot of kills that are tough to deal with, and he'll be able to grab those kills and potentially fall off safely as well if he's got a player positioned somewhat aggressively over on the other side. Now, if we want to talk about the T side, I think the T side is going to be a little bit a matter of reacting to what these CTs are doing and trying to come up with solutions. Obviously, going fast towards middle is a very effective way to do things, but as the map continues to progress, different teams are going to be playing very differently on this map, and that's going to make it very hard for you to actually come to a conclusion of how you should be playing. Once things even out a little bit more and people know the optimal way to play on CT side, then you're going to see that you can actually react as a T a little bit more effectively. However, when you still have teams that I load into games with that think you solo B or you duo A, for some reason duoing A seems to be the most common setup people try to play when I get into a game with them, you're going to be able to adjust a little bit differently. Regardless, you're probably going to be looking for a bit of mid-heavy play where you're going for something like a smoke in towards house like this, as well as, a smoke in towards donut if you can throw one. There's a lot of different lineups you can throw for a smoke towards donut. Again, I'll show you a video of that. You throw that type of smoke, you have this player also throw a flash behind, and then you have the first player coming out middle, throw something like a double click flash, and then you can go for very aggressive mid control really early on in the round. And this is obviously going to be bread and butter if it works out for you. However, you're most likely going to have to delay this a little bit if you play against strong teams that are willing to stack middle, because you are going to need the support from this side of the map as well. And without this sort of support where you can smoke that off and come through, your opponents are going to be capable of holding it against you. So this is going to be a mid-control heavy map. The trouble is simply that it's not going to be very intuitive how you can do it, and you're going to have to play it somewhat by ear with the way you run around on this map. The only thing you know for certain is you're going to need a couple of players that come over to this side of the map towards the lane. You're going to need a couple of players that come over towards the other side of middle, and you're probably going to want one player that usually defaults somewhere over towards A or is able to support middle early as well. Something like a player throwing this type of smoke and then flash and then coming over to try and default over to A would make a whole lot of sense. The idea is simply that you want heavy mid control, you want this lane control as well. It's somewhat risky for the CTs to try and contest you in here because it is a straight up aim duel on a somewhat CT sided map, which means the T's could absolutely win this, and if the T's were to win this, it wouldn't be very good for the CTs in the long run. However, once the T's get control of that, they should be able to push the CTs off of middle. Once the CTs are off of middle and the T's do hit towards a bomb site, this is why I think that holding utility on this map is going to be somewhat effective. Again, I already showed this, but you can easily molly towards the bomb site with a molly like that. That's just going to molly out any standard bomb plant. And while the bomb will be planted, that molly's not going to be able to stop it from being planted entirely. It will most likely kill the bomb planter, and then you have smokes like this and smokes like this that will push out the majority of the T's. And unfortunately, while you can molly back as T's to push the bomb plant or the bomb diffuser off of the bomb, you've probably used a good amount of your utility in even taking the bomb site, and it's not going to be all that comfortable. Luckily though, although they did try to nerf this spam entirely, there is this little spam here where you absolutely can still spam someone trying to defuse the bomb, as there's this little I would imagine this is a glitch, and honestly wouldn't surprise me at all if they tried to fix it, because this does very high damage. With an op, it does 90 damage. And they've clearly tried to make a clear effort to stop spams through both of these walls. And this one, it doesn't look like you can actually spam it at all. I haven't been able to find anything consistent that goes straight through very much. However, this one you can consistently spam right down here. So to reiterate, as CTs, you're probably playing 2B, 2 mid, 1A, occasionally rotating over to something like an aggressive B setup and a mid stack setup, because your opponents can't have very much information as to what is going on A without full committing. And they shouldn't be very often full committing out A, because if you don't have donut control, you're not going to be in a great spot to even plant the bomb in the first place, and it's just a very risky play to be going for. As Ts, you're going to want to be sending 2 players over to B as well, likely 2 players over towards middle here, and 1 player that throws something like a house smoke and then a flash, and most likely is either going to support in middle as a 3rd player, or will come over to control A. You're just going to need to play it by ear and try to define if they are doing some anonymous style, you know, stacking towards middle, leaving A, and you can go for something like a lurk. As a T, once you've got mid control, you need to be able to parlay that into some control on this B side, where you can try either to get control of this area here, or you can try and sequentially take control of Donut Room, but that is going to be very tough to do and likely require a good amount of utility just thrown somewhat on the fly to deal with all the players that could be in here. And it's very likely the CTs will go something like 1 for 1 at worst, or something like 2 for 1 if they do any better. And it is somewhat easy for a re-aggression from this type of area, or a double re-aggression through here to try and catch you off guard. You have to be fairly precise about it. For the Ts, when you're actually taking the bomb site, this is the thing that I think should need to be changed, is the bomb plant. Because right now, the solution to trying to plant the bomb is to make your teammates do it. Because you're just hoping, you're praying you don't die. And personally, I don't think that's a very fun mechanic. I think that's not something that should be really brought into the game the way Valve is doing it with Vertigo and with this map, where essentially planting the bomb is rolling the dice. It's just anti-fun for people that are planting the bomb, because again, even these walls somewhat line up here. It's going to be stupidly easy to spam a bomb planter, and a molly in the middle of the bomb site is going to take out literally almost every single bomb plant. The same thing goes for the B side, and a single nade is going to take out the major bomb plant area, because there's not too many places to plant on this site that are safe at all, because of how small the bomb site is, which means you're really only ever going to be planting here, which means it's going to be very easy to line up and land nade stacks on top of this player and get free kills. Similarly, a nade stack in the middle of the bomb site here will do 30 damage to the corners of the bomb plant zone, which means at worst, a triple nade would kill any bomb planter, but more likely you double nade right about there, and you're going to kill the majority of the standard plants, which are going to be along this box, or more likely a bit out from the box to avoid standard spam. So this is the main thing that I think absolutely needs to be changed. And if you were to move this bomb site on A little bit more over towards this side and allow the potential for Ts to go for some bomb plants where they play back off of the bomb site, I think that would be a lot more reasonable. So generally, this map is going to be pretty volatile in terms of the way you play and the setups you rotate between. The map should still be seeing some changes. That's why I was a little bit tentative to make this video. However, with some data I got from Leadify, I decided to go for it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.